So with season 2 just around the corner, we thought, hey, people have been asking about it for ages, we better review season 1 of Stranger Things.
Yes, that show that just popped up out of nowhere last year, we're finally going to review it. I did actually see it last year, so I am feeling a little bit rusty because it's been quite a long time. However, you have only just finished it.
Yes, I just finished it last night, so everything's kind of all fresh, all the ideas are completely new. It's something that I put off watching for ages because I wasn't particularly interested in it, but I'm glad I have seen it now because it was one of the best things that Netflix has done. Let's talk about it. So Stranger Things did kind of come out of nowhere last year and it kind of took the world by storm. Most people in film circles were aware of its existence, we knew that it was coming, but we weren't expecting it to catch on like the complete wildfire it was. Like this thing just spread, the internet absolutely like snapped it up, they adored it, and you can see why. Stranger Things is like an 80s homage that grows into something much more organic and original and much more of this time as it develops. The show centers on this small US town of Hawkins where this young boy goes mysteriously missing and the community, including his best friends, his family, and the police chief work together to find out exactly what happened to him. Is he alive? Is he still out there? How do we find him? There's a lot of strange things going on.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's Stranger Things.
And you can immediately see why this show caught on. It's down to like a very, very simple fact of it just has great characters. There's not many shows around nowadays where kind of every central character is actually a good person. Yes, these characters are kind of, I don't want to say flawed, but they have some form of thing that puts them on the back foot, whether it's emotionally, socially, just there's something about each character in which they're kind of disabled by their position in the world around them. There's some people that are kind of like easy to root with no matter what. And the show gives a really, really strong growing space to see where these characters could potentially grow into. And it's very much about the journey to see these people become who they can potentially be. It's about these people kind of finding their place in the world, finding the way that they can do good. And I think that's a really, really genius way of approaching TV in this day and age where everything's so dark. All these people, you know, these people may die, the world is terrible, people are terrible. This is a show which I feel is really on the surface, like actually on a deeper level, about people just being good and all people have good in them in some way.
Yeah, it's fantastic. It allows us as an audience to connect with it really easily. I mean, like all these characters kind of have a beautiful level of immaturity, which just allows them to make mistakes along the way. I mean, most of them, our lead characters here, are kids, so they're constantly making mistakes. Mistakes which can lead them to hate one another, lose their best friend, lose a girlfriend, gain a girlfriend, or you've got adults that are making mistakes, silly, immature mistakes just because of their own life circumstances, which just allows the show to become really, really relatable to not just a small sort of younger demographic, but a larger, you know, adult demographic as well.
It definitely taps into something human that works in its favor. All people want to see other people succeed. I think we forget that in this day and age when violence and anger and aggression is such a prevalent thing in like the world culture. So it's great to have a show that just focuses on such positive energy the entire time. And it helps that this entire show is anchored around a mystery. Across the course of the 8-episode run, we're focusing on one essential kind of mystery. It makes it feel very much like a mini-series as opposed to something episodic. Yes, by the time we get to the finale, things kind of blow out and start to open up to say, hey, we're ready to go again for a season 2. But it does feel incredibly focused the entire time. And that's why this doesn't feel like traditional TV. Obviously, it's on Netflix, it's on a streaming service. But the show does find a really organic way for each episode to flow into the next and feel like an organic whole. That being said, I am incredibly frustrated by Netflix's insistence on skipping credits. Not just that thing that pops up saying, you want to skip the intro, which God no, because this intro of this show is incredible, but skipping the end credits. End credits, when a song transitions into them, is supposed to give you time to unwind and reflect on what you've seen. It's not supposed to say, you want to see what's coming next? You want to see what's coming next? For me, that was an incredibly frustrating thing. If I like kind of close my eyes or stop paying attention for like 5 seconds or something it automatically skips them. And I found every episode, I'm like going back, okay, let's go back to the episode again, credits, get rid of that skip thing and actually watch it through so I get the full emotional or psychological through line of the episode. I hate the fact that Netflix is trying to take that away from us because it wants us to watch the next episode.
It's so frustrating, and it's simply just a producer thing because directors don't want it.
No.
I mean, my goodness, if you've got like an artist out there creating a piece of art and they did a painting, they don't want to wipe away their piece of art and show you the next one. It doesn't work like that. Same things happen with directors here. You know, they create their entire piece of art from beginning to end, including the credits. That's why you've got such beautiful, you know, finishing credit songs sometimes, or even in movies, you know, like when you're sitting there in a theater and you're in deep thought, or you discuss it with your friend next to you after the film, like you don't get up and leave.
You have
instantly.
that music in the background, you have that respect for the people who have actually made the show. I get the idea that Netflix is supposed to bounce you directly onto the next thing, but you've got to give people their own kind of choice. It's a bit more relaxed than, okay, it's been 5 seconds, next episode. That whole thing aside, which isn't really anything to do with the show, it's just a mini rant at Netflix's viewing style. This show really does succeed, as we said, on the characters, and I want to discuss the characters specifically because this show is so much about that. All these characters kind of caught on in pop culture really quickly, and they deserve to because they're so well designed. I think the absolute stars of the show here are David Harbour as Chief Hopper and Millie Bobby Brown as Eleven. These two characters are the people who I feel like have the strongest arcs in the season. Possibly. They're these two people who are driven by the fact they really, really want to do good, even though they're kind of put at their own biggest disadvantages because of their own context, and watching them grow is really incredible. These are the two characters that are offered the quietest moments. This show's very, very well paced. It kind of charges along. It clips along at a really kind of feisty rate that keeps the story flowing in a really, really engaging manner. But I found the show was almost at its best when it slows down to the quieter moments, which puts characters on their own when they have to kind of learn stuff about the world around them. And I feel like these are the two actors that got the most to do with this kind of material, and they also delivered the most. I mean, immediately I felt a connection with both of them, particularly Millie Bobby Brown, who in her moments of kind of discovering the world, almost like for those of you who have seen the movie Room with Jacob Tremblay, which was an Oscar winner a couple of years back, having someone who's been trapped all this time and then finally getting to go out and experience the world in an organic way is such a beautiful thing to watch, and she did such a great job. Especially with that dialogue here as well, and it's both Eleven and Hopper's characters. I mean, both their introductions are absolutely fantastic. I mean, Eleven is almost completely silent when we first meet her, and it's all through facial expressions. Hopper's character is pretty much hungover, and he's feeling like shit. He brushes off his other police officers, and he just wants to go take a seat and get through the day. And so, I mean, like, we just get so much information instantly from these characters just by their looks, the way they move, the way they interact with others, and I think it just allows us to feel so much sympathy instantly towards them. And all the characters here are introduced in really effective ways that endear us to them instantly, which is a very, very difficult thing to do. For instance, going back to Hopper, his first shot, which was kind of a one-er that showed his entire apartment and showed everything that this guy is living in, gave us a lot of context before we even see him. And that is a very difficult thing to do effectively and then have it carry over. If we look at our three kind of leads as such, which are Dustin, Mike, and Lucas, all three child actors do amazing work here, but their characters being the underdogs, being the bully, but being these incredibly smart, witty, and kind of fiery young kids makes this a very, very interesting group that's very engaging the entire time. And just a hell of a lot of fun as well. I mean, they've got such a beautiful kind of setting to play with here. Being the 80s, having so many pop culture references, and having like a sci-fi setting sitting underneath them the whole time. It's just great to have young kids having fun with this environment. I mean, like, we've seen it previously in E.T. done expertly well, but here I think, you know, the kids are much better than the kids we get in E.T. because we do have more time with them, of course, but also just kind of the talent and the organic, you know, raw acting ability these kids have to kind of not only bring these scripts to life, but make them almost feel like improv at times as well. We also have Winona Ryder as Joyce, the mother of the missing child, and where I feel like a lot of people can dismiss her character as a crying, bumbling, babbling mess that is incredibly frenetic and paranoid, she has completely earned all of that because that completely makes sense for a character. Her son has gone missing. She's a woman who's working she's supporting her two sons on her own, no help from the father. She has committed everything to her kids. So seeing like her kind of unravel like that and be the only person who believes that her son is alive, the only person who can, like, she feels like she's going mad, but she knows she's not. Just incredible work from her.
Yeah, I mean, and even her eldest son, Jonathan, here as well. I mean, he's going through his own journey, and it kind of like counteracts her as well, because he's no support to her whatsoever. But their relationship throughout the entire show is absolutely fantastic.
Of the best. It's magical.
I mean, seeing them feed off one another, it just creates for some beautiful, heartbreaking moments. I mean, especially when Jonathan goes ham at her, and she just won't listen to him. But I mean, just love it.
And even rolling onto the other characters like Nancy, who is the older sister of Mike, she's going through her own stuff at the beginning of the show that feels very detached from the rest. And while at the start of the show I was kind of a bit iffy about that, no matter how good her performance was, her kind of relationship with the other characters around her and watching her grow into someone who isn't just going to be this person who tries to fit in desperately, becomes her own person, is capable of doing things that even she didn't expect she was able to do, was an absolute pleasure to watch. And she ended up becoming one of the show's best characters by the end of it, just because she evolved into this kind of timid, quiet, by the books kind of teenage girl into someone who's a complete badass, and I really, really frothed that. This show just did a really good job of kind of using the first 2 episodes to set up stereotypes, and throughout the course of the show, finding ways to flip them. We obviously have the character of Steve, Nancy's boyfriend, who's kind of this jock, kind of an asshole, who as the show progresses, we see him evolve into something much more. And that's very much what this show is about across its entire runtime, is watching these people who on the surface, before we get to know them, seem like these kind of caricatures that are kind of cut out, they're super basic, these stereotypes, and watching them kind of evolve. The last character I want to mention, which is just a quick kind of aside, I watched this after the kind of hype of the initial first season had passed over, so I knew about this thing, this Justice for Barb thing that had started. I was expecting this kind of incredible character with an incredible amount of depth, a lot of time dedicated to her. So seeing what the show had kind of done, without kind of touching on spoilers there for people who haven't seen it, I was kind of surprised that the internet latched onto it just as much as they did, because I've seen characters that have given that same thing, because I understand what she gives to people and what she means, but I've just seen a lot of characters in other shows that have done that a whole lot more, so I don't really know why she caught on as much as she did, whereas you kind of,
I mean, look, I think I just understand. I think people just found her really, really relatable, and they just like loved her character and loved what she was doing, and found a way to access her and almost find themselves
Seems
in
very
Barb
obsessive
as well.
to me though.
Oh,
like,
for sure,
really
but I think when you got a show like this that just takes off like wildfire throughout, you know, the entire world, I suppose, the Western world, everyone just kind of, I don't know, finds their little niches, finds their characters that they love. I've also got to say a massive kudos to the actors, especially in particular Winona Ryder and David Harbour here, who are kind of probably the most known actors in the entire cast, or have established careers at least. To come on board with a show like this that has such a quirky, weird and wacky script with unknown directors, an unknown property, and someone like Netflix, I mean, like, that takes a lot of goddamn balls.
Just everyone involved, to be honest, going, hey, I'm going to give this a shot, and they made it work.
100%, but yeah, like, for established actors to come on board and to trust in, you know, people like that, I just think it's fantastic, because we need to trust in more artists out there, you know, whether things go wrong or they don't go wrong. I think it's just incredibly exciting that a show that on paper looks absolutely bizarre and probably looks as though it could fail, and I don't know if many of you have read the script, it just seems really, really weird. But at the same time, good on them, because, you know, it succeeded and it worked.
Now, while we've talked about the characters being amazing, the show is still in its growing stages. There are still things that are kind of problematic with it, which weirdly don't necessarily like affect the enjoyment of it. As I was watching it, I was taking some notes, and I kind of found that even these little details that I'm noticing, like some of the editing being somewhat choppy and kind of rushed in certain scenes, and not exactly letting emotional peaking happen, never really took away from the enjoyment. Just made the show sit here, where I think if it got a bit more conditioning, a bit more kind of experience behind it, it can really get to somewhere like here. That being said, I do want to say the cinematography was the most consistently on point part of this show in the kind of technical aspects. Like, obviously, I mean, we want to say the writing is fantastic, but I think talking about the characters and how good they were, it was definitely covered. But I think the cinematography here was gorgeous, was excellent, even though some of the setups were really obvious to me. I was like, I can see exactly how they've lit this and where the lights it made for a really beautiful looking show that had a very, very strong vibe.
Yeah, a sweet aesthetic and style as well, and I think it was complemented by such gorgeous costumes as well. Yeah. Costumes that were incredibly relatable, and you kind of remember. I mean, like, some people might go, oh my god, I remember wearing something that bad.
There's a lot of Halloween costumes gonna come from that, yeah.
Yeah, for sure, and I think it was just exciting to have that, because it just allows like another level of aesthetic to this show. I mean, along with kind of like the production design, which is, I mean, fantastic, because it's there and it doesn't become noticeable, and when it's not noticeable,
it's not like, look at this like retro nostalgia stuff. It's just really, really effectively put together. Also, we cannot forget the soundtrack here is incredible. I'd probably say that's the other highlight of this show. The music, and I'm not just talking about the original soundtrack, but the selected music as well. Particular scenes here use songs that I'm familiar with from other kind of media. I've seen it used before. Got its own spin here, some really, really effective moments that allow for some really strong emotional beats. I want to say that this show had a really, really strong way of ending episodes. There's a lot of TV these days which kind of goes peaks and cliffhangs and then moves on to the next thing. Whereas this show wasn't afraid of adding a strong emotional beat to the ending of an episode that tied the entire kind of 50 minutes that had preceded it into a strong kind of thematic bow that gave a strong idea. It's a shame the credits cut away from us sitting on those ideas for as long as we'd have liked to. But it did a very, very good job. I think it was particularly episode 3 or 4 it might have been, had one in particular which I was really quite stunned by, that it was so kind of proficient and skilled by that stage. So the show is fantastically paced, as I've said, as we kind of work towards the ending and everything starts to converge and come together. It does have a fantastic momentum that really builds and grows and carries the show along really effectively. When I've said before, just earlier, that some of the editing is a bit off, is in just the kind of little details in scene structure. There's certain times where a character will call out to someone and then won't give them time to respond before an editor slipped in, so it looks like this. Jay! And that's really, really unnatural editing that I found very distracting each time, as well as certain scenes where I feel like they could have just set the camera in one spot, that one shot was perfect, but instead it goes boom, 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 and I felt like it didn't need to at times, especially when this is relying on things that Spielberg does, and Spielberg never does that. He will let the scene sit and hang and kind of get the maximum use out of one shot. I'm interested to see how season 2 goes with that type of thing in terms of ironing it out.
But overall, it's a fantastic series and incredibly memorable as well, and I'm just really excited to see what the Duffer Brothers do with the second season, as how much they improve, as well as our actors and our new characters, and, you know, the world as such as well, and like where it kind of goes to next.
We've watched a lot of new series this year that we haven't seen before. There's been a lot of great TV. This is a very, very good show. Yes, I think it pales in comparison to some of the other stuff we have watched in terms of just what that other stuff is doing. But this is definitely a great show which I feel is going to consistently grow in a strong manner, as long as it doesn't give into the kind of fan culture that's saying, we want this, we want this. I want the storytellers to stay true to themselves, but I'm very excited to see where this show goes. We're not going to rate it because we don't rate TV shows. We just hope that our words kind of communicate exactly what we feel about the show. We definitely can recommend it to anyone, which is a very rare thing with TV. I feel like anyone who watches this can get some enjoyment from it. We don't at this stage know exactly how we're going to review season 2, because reviewing stuff on Netflix when it's not week by week and we don't have structured reviews with time between them is a very kind of challenging thing for us to approach. It will probably just be a big overall season 2 review, full spoilers, because obviously if you watch season 2, you've seen the first season, we can spoil stuff. That will probably be how we go about it.
So those are our thoughts on season 1 of Stranger Things. What did you think? Let us know in the comment section down below.
And when you're down there, it's probably worth hitting our subscribe button to see more stuff from us, including that season 2 review.
Exactly, and don't forget to check us out on Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, and Twitter, all at Breaking Banter.